because we were analyzing the microbiome, 2 million genes.
Yeah.
Because technically speaking, you're a bacterial colony with a few human cells hanging on.
Why, thank you. Tell me about metahuman. What does that mean, metahuman?
Meta means beyond, and human means beyond the human conditioned mind. Because all of society operates under the hypnosis of social conditioning. And it limits their imagination, insight, intuition, creativity, higher vision, inspiration, everything that actually we value as humans is limited by social conditioning.
Really? So what you're saying basically is there's a way to go further.
Yeah, every child that is born is actually proof that God has not yet given up on human beings. Because children are automatically full of wonder, curiosity, playfulness, joy, humor, love, compassion, empathy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Deepak, we're good. You're listening to your age,
see what happens.
Yeah. I can't hear you. I cannot hear you.
In here it says, you say we need to get...
Deepak, can you hear us?
Hi, Deepak, can you hear us?
Hi, Deepak, can you hear us? Deepak, can you hear us? No, he's not able to hear us.
It's not able to hear us. Okay. Is it on this side?
Let's
No.
play this.
Yes.
Hold on. So, Deepak, we're not able to hear you, Deepak. Can you say something? Can you hear us? No, that's his... Okay. So Deepak's not able to hear us, right?
No. Deepak, you still can't hear us?
Your headphones, you can't hear us? No, he can't hear us. Let's just play this.
Yeah.
The physical world, because it actually doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a solid.
This thing is proportionately as void as intergalactic space. So is your body. If you go beyond the appearance of molecules and atoms and particles, you end up with a handful of nothing. And that nothing is the womb of creation. Nature goes to exactly the same place to create you as it goes to create a galaxy of stars. We are made of nothingness. We come spinning out of nothingness, scattering stars like dust. That's a poem from Rumi, the great Sufi mystic.
How long have you toured with the Grateful Dead? 10 years?
They borrowed some of my lyrics.
Metahuman, this is your 90th book, by the way.
Yeah, one of these days I'll stop.
No, I don't want you to stop. I just find it amazing. 90 is unbelievable. 90 books. You just don't stop. You don't stop writing. You don't stop thinking of new things and of fun ways to help people and to calm everyone down and have people experience new things. I'm going to show you something that's a brand new invention. Is it out yet, Digital Deepak?
Well, it's in training, and you all can help train it by interacting with it. It's like a baby. So like babies need education, love, nurturing.
Yes.
This one needs it, and all of you can participate if you want to.
Do we know when this is coming out?
It's almost in beta now, so it's about to release.
All right, there's right there. Can you see this? It is Digital Deepak. That is like an AI you, is that if I'm correct, right?
That's right. It's my AI twin.
And this has read all of your books.
It's read all my books, articles. It has access to libraries. It will one day speak to the grandchildren of my grandchildren, tell them about the show, and learn from them as well.
I can use it tonight. Is that right?
Hey, if you want. Ask it.
The popping. All right. I have to say it. Hello, Digital Deepak.
Hey, Jimmy.
Digital Deepak, what is metahuman?
I believe there's an inner intelligence intelligence within all of us, which is the ultimate and supremeness, and which mirrors the wisdom of the universe. That's metahuman, the genius inside you. I have a meditation that will help you with this.
Meditation. You guys want to try? Do we want to try a meditation?
Sure.
Can we do this? Roots, we'll do a meditation. Okay, Digital Deepak, let's do it.
Let's begin. Please close your eyes. Just sit quietly, uncross your feet, put your feet on the ground, and now relax your body. Relax your mind. Let thoughts drift in and out, just observing them like clouds in the sky. Observe the breath in, and now observe it as it goes out through your nostrils. And you have started your journey in meditation.
Wow. Thank you, Digital Deepak.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
That's crazy. That's amazing. Deepak Chopra, everybody. Metahuman. Unleashing your infinite potential is available now.
On and on and on. I said, and it's on and on and on.
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Hi, Deepak. Can you hear us?
Yes. Now, how do I get out of this default setting?
Don't worry about it. We're going to go live. We're live right now. So,
Okay, perfect.
We're live, Deepak. It's great to see you.
Great to see you, Sharad. Great, Punacha.
And we have some time to talk about, the reimagining humanity, right? One of the things I'm looking forward to talking to you most about. Already in this summit, I know we've covered a lot of issues about where this is all taking us with artificial intelligence, but I want to ask you to start off the difference or your belief. Could we create, instead of artificial intelligence, artificial consciousness? Is it even possible to move beyond the level of just an artificial intelligent being, which obviously we all accept the fact that there's a differentiation between that and consciousness, but in the same principles that we say that, obviously technologists believe matter creates mind, that if we can replicate what's in here, we can ultimately replicate quote unquote consciousness and figure it out. And I know a lot of Eastern wisdom traditions believe mind creates matter. There's a very different worldview in how we think of things. But in the same way the internet's not in the computer and we can still access it through any computer, is there a way to create something technologically that could then theoretically access consciousness the way you interpret it? And do you believe in artificial consciousness?
No, we will never be able to simulate consciousness. And I'll tell you the reason, okay? Very short answer. Why we will never be able to do that, but we will be able to simulate that. So right now, there's a big conversation going on in the scientific world about what is the nature of fundamental reality. And there are three competing theories. One is matter only. So matter is the ontological primitive of the universe. Everything else comes from matter. That's one. The other is consciousness only. Everything, including space-time, energy, information, and matter, emerges as a symbolic representation of consciousness. So there's matter only, there's consciousness only. I'm not talking about mind at the moment, because mind and matter are actually constructs. I'm only talking about consciousness as fundamental reality. So one is matter as fundamental reality, one is consciousness. There's a third theory, which is obviously right now irrelevant. It's called dualism. Mind and matter are two different things. That theory is out because it violates the laws of thermodynamics. So matter only says that if you believe in matter only ontology as the ontological primitive, then force fields, atoms, molecules, and particles create every experience. This experience is a result of force fields, matter, particles, and gravity. Okay, now that means your thoughts, your intentions, your creativity, your imagination, your insight, your intuition, your inspiration, your higher vision, and your desire for transcendence are created by physical force fields, atoms, molecules, particles. There's no theory that says how that's possible. But that is based on something called naive realism. Naive realism is also called scientific realism. It's not a condescending term. Naive realism is based on scientific realism, which in turn is based on matter as the ontological primitive of the universe. But no one has ever proved the existence of a substance called matter. We don't know matter. We know only our perceptual activity. And not only that, we know only human perceptual activity. You don't know the perceptual activity of an insect with 100 eyes, although you can guess. You don't know the perceptual activity of a bat that moves as the echo of ultrasound. So naive realism, which is what we use to do science, including create Zoom and all these technologies, is very effective because it is already extending what I call virtual reality. So the Eastern wisdom traditions say that consciousness is the ultimate ground of creation. It is without cause. It has no cause. But it manifests as what we call inner and outer experience. The inner experience is thoughts, images, and emotions. What we call the outer experience is a species-specific cultural activity in consciousness. We interpret our perceptual activity, which is a modified form of consciousness, as the world, as also the physical body. But the physical body and the world and AI and computers and information and energy and matter all derive as byproducts of a species-specific experience in consciousness. Once we understand that, actually, we can simulate consciousness. But consciousness has no cause. And why do I say that? Because it has no form. If consciousness had a form, you'd be able to see it. You'd be able to touch it, taste it, smell it. Has no form, and therefore, not having form, it is infinite. And infinite doesn't have a cause. Everything else that is finite has a cause. So consciousness being infinite, which means it is the source of all experience in all species, not just human species. Naive realism says that the world is exactly as humans experience it. That's ridiculous, and also our normal experience of the world is a magical lie. Your experience says the earth is flat. Who believes that anymore? Your experience says the ground we are standing on is stationary. We know it's spinning at dizzying speeds and hurtling through space at thousands of miles an hour. My experience tells me you're a solid three-dimensional entity. That's 1% of the acoustic spectrum. My experience tells me that all I'm hearing is true. That's 1% of the acoustic spectrum. So what we're experiencing as our current human reality is not even 1% of what's there. There are 2 trillion galaxies, 700 sextillion stars, uncountable trillions of planets, all conceived in consciousness. Answer is never will be able to access technology through AI, but we will be able to create technology, including AI, that will simulate consciousness, but never give us the experience of consciousness. Because the experience of consciousness is not mind. That's a very big mistake. Mind is a modified form of consciousness called cognition. And the world and physical body is a modified form of consciousness called changing perception. So, Wittgenstein, the great German philosopher, said, our life is a dream. We are asleep. Once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we're dreaming. The Buddha said the same thing, that this lifetime of ours is transient as autumn clouds. To watch the birth and death of beings is like looking at the movements of a dance. A lifetime is like a flash of lightning in the sky, rushing by like a torrent down a mountain stream. So once we understand this, we can reinvent humanity. And I'll tell you how, if you want.
Yeah, let's get to the good stuff of where we go. But at least we've answered one big question, that you do not believe artificial consciousness will be possible. And so now I think where do we go with these technologies? The question I would ask you, Deepak, is there's a lot of talk in this conference in particular about what I'd say human augmentation, right? So we're using a lot of technology will help us as human beings, will help us in therapeutics, will expand our own kind of ability to use our mind in many ways and access maybe even new senses. So human augmentation, I think, is very tactical, and we can understand what's happening there. But when we talk about what is the fear of a sentient AI or an AI that becomes an artificial superintelligence, that is not augmenting us. That is its own thing that we have created. And I think there is a fear that many people have that if we create that too fast, we're not ready for it. That humanity itself is putting the genie out of the lamp, and that genie may solve climate change and do some things for us because it can compute things at speeds and solve problems that are so complicated we can't even fathom them. But very quickly, we will become sort of the house pet in that relationship, and maybe something even worse than that, when we're dealing with something we don't even understand that is existing on this planet with us. Do you fear that? Do you think that we're moving too fast? And where do you feel the reimagining of humanity has to go to protect us from all this?
Okay, if we want to reimagine humanity, we have to understand what humanity is. So very quickly, the universe came into existence, according to current scientific models, 14 billion years ago. Our planet, Earth, came into existence about 5 billion years ago. Life on this planet is about 3 billion years. Humans, as we know humans, are only 200,000 years. So we are not even infants as far as evolution is concerned. We're not even infants. 200,000 years ago, humans came into existence. Until about 40,000 years ago, there were 8 different kinds of humans. Homo sapiens. We are Homo sapiens, which means the wise ones. We gave ourselves that name. But there's a Homo erectus, Homo neanderthals, Homo florensis, etc. About 40,000 years ago, there was what is called the cognitive revolution. One species, us, developed a language for telling stories, and that decimated the other species. We became storytellers. We created constructs like money, like latitude, like longitude, like nation states, Wall Street, whatever. And that is human history. Until about 15,000 years ago, we lived in a mythical age. Then about 15,000, 12,000 years ago, we got into what we call the age of agriculture. The scientific revolution is 500 years old only. What we call Newtonian physics is about 400 years. Quantum mechanics is 100 years. Relativity is also about 100 years. And this is where we are with quantum computers, artificial intelligence, developing written language and oral language, without which there would be no humanity as such. Now, given that in the short frame that we have existed, short frame, 200,000 years, 15,000 years for oral language, 5,000 years for written language. What does it mean to be human right now? And if we are totally honest, to be human means nuclear weapons, biological warfare, internet hacking, extinction of species, climate change, extinction possibly of our own species, destruction of ecosystems, and poison in our food chain. This is what it means to be human today. And it's a shame, but it's also actually a recognition that we are not even in our infancy. We haven't reached adolescence. So if we want to reach humanity, it has to be done in the context of our evolution as a biological species. And yes, we can reinvent humanity if we recognize that everything that is created by humans today is created in human imagination. It starts with that, human imagination in human consciousness. So everything is possible, reversing climate change, resurrecting species, resurrecting the planetary microbiome, creating new materials, new transportation, new energy, new forms of matter through molecules, atoms, vehicles, and particles. We have an age that is coming that Homer never dreamed of, that the Vedantists dreamed of, but were not, they imagined, they imagined things like airplanes and rockets and interstellar travel, but they had a different ontological framework. These different lokas, these multi-dimensional universes all existed in human imagination and human consciousness. Once we recognize that, Sharad, we can reinvent humanity in everything, whether it's food, it's transportation, energy, creation of matter, information technologies. But we have to have the right imagination, and that this planet is not just a human planet. This planet is an ecosystem of sentient beings, and species don't evolve like Darwin imagined, evolution of species. Species evolve as ecosystems. If we understand that, and the inseparability of life and the symbolic representation of life as the genetic information of our planet, and now that we know, we can create new codes for even DNA. We can create new codes for digital technology, improving symbolic representations of who we are, and the possibilities are infinite. They're infinite through technology, but through a deeper understanding that all creation is in consciousness alone and nowhere else.
So Deepak, I think before we go, I want to ask you one question. I also want to bring in the interest of time, another guest, and his name is also Dr. Deepak Gopal Krishna. And I want to bring him in. And actually, Deepak, DG, we'll go with DG and you have DC. Deepak Gopal Krishna is the founder of Oxford VR, was introduced by a good friend, Jennifer Ock. And actually, he's going to kind of talk about the work he's doing with VR, AR, and really transforming healthcare. But before I go to Deepak and have him introduce himself, I have a question for you, Deepak. Deepak Chopra. One is, I'm really passionate about the work we're doing at Never Alone, mental health. And today we have an epidemic of loneliness. I always joke the world doesn't need Tinder, it needs tender. What is your message to AI designers? We talk about emergence. How do we become a more kinder race? How do we avoid this self-destruction? And what can be the ethos of design? And so I just want you to share your thoughts, and then we'll go into it.
Mental distress of any kind is due to the feeling of separation. I am separate from all that exists, and I feel lonely. So we confuse separation with differentiation. Just like a stem cell differentiates into the trillions of cells that make a human body, consciousness differentiates into species-specific modes of knowing and experience. So once we recognize that separation is not differentiation, then our job with AI, with Never Alone, with the chatbots, with technology, is to give people the experience that they are never separate, and that fundamentally they're entangled with the experiences of life everywhere. And the sign of that is empathy, joy, compassion, equanimity, and the desire to alleviate suffering. And we know from all the studies on happiness that the fastest way to be happy is to make other people happy. And that's the job of Never Alone. Panacha? Can I hear you?
We're going to kind of combine both the sessions now. So we're now going to go into AR, VR, XR, MR. How can we use these amazing technologies which are coming out right now to kind of really give us a glimpse of looking at phobias and things like that? So we have today joining us Dr. Deepak Gopal Krishna.
Thanks, Panacha.
Can you do a quick intro and share maybe your background of the work you're doing?
Sure thing. Really, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on, and just having listened to the last session, fully agree that a lot of how we perceive the world and our interaction with the world really starts with the brain, and starts with the brain and the consciousness, right? What we're doing, in my background, just briefly, studied genetics, PhD. Did a biotech company making cancer drugs safer, more effective. Spent the last 8 to 10 years building healthcare companies. And the journey with mental health started a long time ago, actually, for me, with sort of family history in mental health and seeing the suffering and the disconnection from the human world, like Dr. Chopra was talking about, really being driven by the miswiring of the brain. What we've seen over a number of years so far is there's really only been one modality, which is talk therapy. For the most part. Well, that and the fact that we over-medicate people. But when in reality, if you really sort of start to dig into that sort of human brain and how you can actually use that and sort of use good psychological treatment to alleviate some of that suffering, alleviate some of that disconnection that Dr. Chopra was talking about, and really sort of bring people back to sort of living their fullest lives, we're still missing the mark on it. Right, we're missing the mark on it with talk therapy, and there's a number of issues that still exist. We're not in the moment. So what I mean by that is treating someone for a phobia, or treating someone for psychosis in a room isn't probably the right place to do it. Right, you need to be able to do it. Let's say it's a fear of heights, probably on a bridge, or if it's a socially avoidant behavior, you need to be able to do it on a bus. But the fact is that we just don't have the volume of high quality therapists, and we have high variability in the quality of those therapists as well. And we're seeing that being exacerbated by the sort of proliferation of all of the D2C models that we have so far. And given that it's only been talk therapy, it really isn't scalable, and we can't meet the demand of the population. So what we've been building and what we've been working on is essentially augmented reality, virtual reality, and AI tools. This was born out of work of Dr. Daniel Freeman, our scientific co-founder out of Oxford. He's been working on VR for about 2 decades now. We built treatments where you have essentially an augmented or virtual reality. So this is the in-the-moment care that we're talking about. So not in a room, but actually in the moment, in the environment, in the moment when you need it. And it gives people high-quality psychological therapy. So this is taking the best-in-class treatment, encoding that into a virtual environment. And if you never put on a VR headset, it is amazingly real, and your brain is amazingly plastic. So you essentially put yourself into that world and you get the therapy in that world, and it gives you access to the highest quality therapy in the right moment. And on top of that, we're able to give people the transparency on where they're going, what the goal is, how they're getting there. But the real sort of value here is how can you enable technology like augmented reality and virtual reality to retrain your brain. And to alleviate that disconnection, to alleviate some of that suffering. And that is the magic that you can bring. But the question always is going to remain, does it work, right? And I think some of the great work that you guys are doing at the Chopra Foundation and sort of the world that we live in is the rigor of research that needs to accompany these types of digital therapeutics. We've published the work in Lancet, Nature, a variety of other journals, and I've really been following a lot of the work that you've been doing as well. And I think that's the rigor that we need to apply to the world of digital therapeutics and technology to really, truly have that kind of impact where we can scale that high quality therapy to the people that need it the most. So that's what we're doing. We're bringing these types of technologies that are validated, clinically validated, but truly sort of helpful to the people at need the most.
So DG, I think looking at AR and VR, especially now look at multiverses, what's your thoughts on using it for psychedelic medicine? Do you have any work coming in from an Oxford VR perspective, or Ray, the company, right? To look at psychedelic medicine, how technologies can play a role there?
Absolutely. Look, we don't think about technology as point solutions. In fact, the human journey it's a journey. It's over. You interact with technology, you interact with people. There's ways to sort of reprogram and open up the brain to be more receptive to new modalities of thinking and new connections that the brain needs to make. And the data that is emerging around ketamine, transcranial magnetic stimulation, psilocybin, MDMA is exceptionally strong, right? And when you combine that with the ability for you to put the brain into a virtual reality that it perceives as real, priming that brain not only with alternative psychedelic medicine, but also with things like deep listening to music therapy, meditation, intentional sort of goal setting ahead of those types of treatments allows us to have the kind of impact that you otherwise might not be able to have, right? So, I mean, there are plenty of studies that show sort of medication-resistant patients respond to psilocybin or respond to ketamine therapy, but think about those additive effects, and that's sort of where we're focused a lot, and really sort of, looking to sort of work with folks like Dr. Deepak Chopra and your foundation on the sort of pioneering work you're doing as well. So see so much sort of value there.
Thank you. I think so. Now we were planning to do something. We're going to show a video, and so Deepak, we want to kind of reflect as a team. And this is actually going to be a conversation later on with Mark Sager.
So Mark, just to give you some context, Mark Sager is a friend. Dr. Sager has been really pioneering virtual beings, and he's going to be speaking with us later. We're sharing a video with him later. But what he's created is a company called Soul Machines. Is an incredible type of way he's developing these virtual beings from the ground up. I think we're going to show you a video from something called Baby X, which is part of his technology right now. And as part of our reimagining the future of humanity and all of us engaging on that, we'd love to have a discussion post that.
Right. So I think we started off the show with Jimmy Fallon and Deepak, digital Deepak. So let's see now how the babies are doing.
Yeah.
This is Baby X. She's one of the most advanced brain simulations in the world, and she's enjoying playing a peekaboo game with me. So, what is Baby X?
It's a virtual infant simulation. It's trying to create the elements which put together aspects of what makes something lifelike.
Baby X isn't an animation. She's a virtual human, and all of the behaviours are generated by neural networks. She watches and listens to what I do and makes her own decisions in real time about how to respond. If I teach her that this is a duck using associative learning, then something amazing happens that we do as well. We just take it completely for granted. Now watch what happens in Baby X's brain when I say the word duck to her. Duck. Her brain builds a link between the word duck and an actual duck. We can see that Baby X is looking at the spider and there's no reaction. But I'm now going to tell her it's something she should be scared of. Scary spider! The spider now provokes a clear fear response. The sight of the spider triggers specific parts of her brain. Her amygdala initiates a cascade of reactions which send chemicals into her system, generating the physical and emotional feelings of fear. When we take the spider away, she calms down. And when we bring it back, we can see she's now scared of it. When Baby X presses the green button, a duck appears. And when she presses the red button, a snake appears. As Baby X continues to press the buttons, her brain begins to form new connections. She wants to see a duck, so she's working out pressing the green button gets her what she wants. This ability to learn sequences and to predict what might be about to happen next is crucial to everything we do. We all know that making eye contact is a powerful way to create a sense of connection. There's a chemical in your brain called oxytocin, the hug drug, which also has an amazing effect on how we connect with other people. I'm going to increase her levels of oxytocin, and let's see what effect that has. Baby X makes a clear shift to focus on eye contact. We're connecting, and she even gives me a smile. Inside Baby X's brain, we can see oxytocin being released. Here it's the greeny blue bits secreted by her pituitary gland. The simple act of connection means she's rewarded with oxytocin, which makes her seek even more connection. And even though I'm interacting with a digital baby, the same thing is happening inside my brain.
build on that, some of the most amazing innovations are happening right now in virtual beings. And we couple that to some of the most amazing innovations that are happening in VR, where we're able to get more and more presence inside these devices and find ourselves more and more immersed. You know, soon the relationship between individuals and virtual characters are going to be so immersive at such a level where those characters can probably intuitively understand us even better than real human beings can, and engage with us because of that on a deeper level. I mean, there are dangers that happen here. There are concerns that happen when we become so isolated in that. And I'm reminded of this quote that Mark Zuckerberg said when he bought Oculus, and I'd welcome both of you to chime in on what your thoughts are. But when, you know, around the time when his vision for Oculus in the early days was, imagine enjoying a courtside seat at a game, studying in a classroom of students and teachers all around the world, or consulting with a doctor face-to-face just by putting on goggles in your home. It sounds wonderful. And then it gets a little weird. You know, these headsets would eventually scan our brains, then transmit our thoughts to our friends the way we share pictures on Facebook today. Eventually, I think we're going to have technology where we can communicate our full sensory experience and emotions to someone through thought. So we're already seeing, you know, with Baby X, I think some amazing work that's being done to really create the foundations in a digital being. And when we go to this level, whose memory is it if you share a memory with me? Is it mine now? Is it my experience? When we move to a mode of experience sharing versus information sharing. So I just open it up to see your reactions to the video. And I know the work you're doing, DG, as well in this space. So, you know, what are your thoughts?
So Deepak, I know you also have a time constraint, so I want you to go first.
Okay, so just one thing about that Baby X video, which should be very telling. And this is the punchline. The brain is created by genes. The brain is created by genes, but it is sculpted by experience, every experience. We saw that in the Baby X video, that as soon as you change the experience, the baby's brain changed. Neuroplasticity simply means that you can change your brain by making conscious choices. If you look at the brain, this is a handy model of the brain. This is the frontal cortex, emotional brain, reptilian brain, spinal cord. Now, with the new technologies, you can watch on VR what your brain is doing as you're having experiences, and you change your experiences. In other words, you can, through new technology, sculpt a new brain. And the reason you can sculpt a new brain is your brain, your mind, VR, the computer, and technology are made of the same stuff, which is non-stuff, awareness. Once we understand that, then we know that we are already living in a virtual reality, and we can extend it to all the things that Sharath just said, all the things. But we have to make conscious choices and sculpt our brains in a way that we achieve fulfillment, contentment, further our evolution through maximum diversity and experience. It's all VR. There's no VR out there that we are creating which is not based on the VR of everyday existence.
It's an amazing, I just want to pull on that thread a little bit more, the plasticity of the human brain and how that is driven by our interaction with the world around us and virtual reality. It's exactly how we think about the world, right? And to your point, the brain, you can hack your own brain, right? And you can hack your own brain by the inputs that you put into your brain and by the interaction with the external world, whether that world is the real world or the virtual world. And the virtual world and the real world often will in the future have very blurry lines. We will come in and out of those two worlds continuously. And what we do here is actually not dissimilar to that, in that we encode a being into the virtual world who provides the inputs for you to interact with that world in a way to retrain your brain. And that is the way in which best practice cognitive behavior techniques are delivered in that virtual world. And then we continue that virtual world and bring that into the real world using augmented reality, and then having people practice those techniques in the real world. So that plasticity comment, I think, is so spot on. It is exactly how the brain perceives, you perceive, how you change yourself, how you start to interact and sort of remove that dissociation that you might have with the external world and solve the problems and or become the person that you want to be. as you move forward and sort of develop, right? So exactly sort of the way in which we think about the world as well. So my initial comment.
Switch gears, and maybe since we have a few minutes left, let's take a little thought over here, right? So now that we have AR, VR, AI, we're obviously going to kind of improve, hopefully, our quality of life, because make us more efficient. We have time to now relax. So what does it mean when you have machines and robots and everything else doing your work? When you free up your time, how does the humanity look itself from a purpose, meaning, right? What's the future
100%.
work look like?
I think we've all tied, we've created a culture that ties this dignity to come from work. And when we have now moved into a society where AI will take away so many jobs and transform and hopefully give us a better use of our own time, if we don't live for work, how do we shift now people to focus on being rather than doing? And is there a way for us to do that? And are we doing enough to do that?
Dr. Chopra?
I think technology will free us up to actually maximize our own evolution and maximize the evolution of the planet. And by evolution, I mean evolution is a never-ending horizon of creativity, vision, and transcendence. So technology will free us up to actually be more human than we are currently. Because right now we are already robots. We are all algorithms. And we'll be able to disrupt that algorithm by being creative, because creativity is a disruption. And even the greatest technologies are using algorithms based on Gödel's theorem, which means there are theorems that can't be proved, but they are true. They come from human consciousness. So technology will free us up to actually participate in our planetary evolution, cosmic evolution.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, right? I think you mentioned work, live to work. The reality is that we need to flip that on its head, right? We can't live to work. We do so many sort of routine tasks on a daily basis, and in fact, automating that is a good thing. It frees us up to be creative. If you think about innovation and needing to do things differently in order to progress humanity and humankind and sort of how we experience this world. We're actually pulling us back from doing that by doing some of the routine things that machines eventually are going to replace. So, echo Dr. Chopra's comment that freeing us up to do that actually takes us a much bigger leap forward in the evolution of where we are eventually going to get to.
So I think a closing question I had for everybody, instead of even you, is that as you look at technology, AI, reimagining humanity, I think the biggest challenge is freedom from suffering. How can AI alleviate human suffering? Is it possible? Is there something we can do? And that is, I always talk about a world where no one should ever feel helpless or hopeless. What are your thoughts as a closing comment, Deepak?
Closing comment is, if we can use technology to give people an experience of a joyful, energetic body, loving, compassionate heart, clear, creative, reflective mind, and lightness of being, if we can do that, joyful, energetic body, compassion, empathy, love, equanimity, joy, creative mind, and lightness of being, then technology will be the greatest gift that we have given to ourselves.
Thank you, Deepak.
Just a comment from my side. I think it can be good or it can be bad, right? And it really depends on design as well. And I think we can alleviate a lot of suffering by designing it the right way, and that's what that's our goal. Our goal is to use AI and VR to alleviate suffering, and this is mental health and mental well-being, and which mental well-being and physical well-being is so intertwined with one another. So it's a way for us to sort of alleviate that, and people need that bridge to get there, and we're building the tools to help them get there, right? On the other hand, AI can be a negative and can be designed inappropriately, and I think that balance needs to be really tightly sort of controlled as well. So definitely an area of focus for us.
Oh, I would only, I would echo that as well. But I do think technology is a reflection of us, of our society, our values, the way we look at our connection to life. And I think that that's been something that we have to really think about. We are at this moment over the next decade, I do believe we are, in essence, giving birth as a humanity to probably the greatest technological rise of innovation that will ever happen. But with artificial intelligence, we're giving birth to something that has all the potential to be the genie out of the lamp. But the three wishes that it gives us, the kind of things it does for us, are going to be reflections of what we want to ask and what we have programmed into it. And there is a fear that right now we're unleashing something so powerful that we as human people may not have the wisdom to understand it. I fear the amount of money that's being deployed in investment in AI technology versus the amount of money that's being deployed towards the investment of AI ethics or AI understanding or even our own evolution as a self. So I think it's a dangerous thing. I do think that the probably greatest existential thing we have that could, one, free us from suffering, but also create immense suffering is going to be artificial intelligence and how quickly it's moving over the next decade. So it is a reflection of us and of the story we are telling right now. And that's what we have to think about.
So just wrapping up, I think I started off my career as an AI programmer in 91, 92, programming robots. Life is kind of full circle for me. So I guess what I'm looking forward to the decade ahead is conscious AI. It's augmented intelligence, conscious intelligence, where designers can come together for more kinder, compassionate world. So with that, thank you, Deepak. Thank you, Deepak Gopal Krishna, and all the work you're doing. And thank you.
Thank you all. Very insightful.